Imagine it is Election Day 2010. Here, this will help. It's November 2nd, 2010. Decision 2010. You are home. You are home in, say, Baltimore, for example. One of the things you get to vote on in your state today, Election Day 2010, is who will be Maryland's governor. The incumbent, Democrat Martin O'Malley, you can see him there on the left. He is being challenged by a former Republican governor named Bob Ehrlich. So you're at home in Baltimore. It's Election Day, November 2010. And while you're home, your phone rings. You pick up the phone, and this is what you hear.
I'm calling to let everyone know that Governor O'Malley and President Obama have been successful. Our goals have been met. The polls were correct, and we took it back. We're okay. Relax. Everything is fine. The only thing left is to watch on TV tonight. Congratulations, and thank you.
Our goals have been met. Everything's fine. Don't bother going to vote. Stay home and watch TV. That was a robocall, an automated recording with no paid for by blah, blah, blah at the end of it. That automated recording went out on Election Day 2010, and it went to more than 100,000 voters in Baltimore City and in Prince George's County. Baltimore City and Prince George's County are notable for two things in electoral politics. They are both majority black jurisdictions, and majority black districts tend to vote strongly Democratic. In the 2008 election in Baltimore City, Barack Obama got about 200,000 votes. John McCain got 28,000. In Prince George's County in 2008, Barack Obama got 300,000 votes. John McCain got about a tenth of that. Those are huge, huge margins. Baltimore City and Prince George's County, largely African-American and reliably Democratic. The robocall saying don't go vote today targeted those specific jurisdictions. Now, it may have been an accident or it may have been a coincidence, but that is not what a grand jury thinks. Two operatives from the Bob Ehrlich campaign, from the Republican challenger's campaign, have been indicted in Baltimore City now for orchestrating that robocall. This was a criminal indictment. One of the operatives was Paul Shurek, Bob Ehrlich's campaign manager. The grand jury charged him with 3 counts of conspiring to violate state campaign laws and 2 counts of violating election laws. The other man charged was a consultant named Julius Henson. He faces similar charges. According to the indictment today, the plan to discourage likely Democratic voters from voting was months in the making.
The indictments say Henson's plan was hatched in June of last year. It was called the Shurek Doctrine, the indictments say, which was designed to promote confusion, emotionalism, and frustration among African-American Democrats focused in precincts where high percentages of African-Americans vote.
Shurek Doctrine, to confuse, upset, and promote confusion among black Democrats, focused in precincts where high percentages of African-Americans vote. On Election Day, about 2 hours before polls closed, the consultant, at least it says in the complaint, the consultant sent the campaign manager a text message confirming that this robocall, this don't bother to vote robocall, had gone out, and he wanted to make sure that he was going to get paid for it tomorrow. That's the allegedly illegal way to make sure the people who you do not want to vote cannot or do not vote. And yes, you can do it the illegal way, and that can sometimes result in your house getting raided by the feds while the local media films it. You can also do the same sort of thing the legal way. According to the nonpartisan Brennan Center at NYU, this year at least 37 states are considering or have considered new laws this year to make it harder to vote or harder to register to vote. 7 states have passed laws limiting the ways you can register and making it more difficult and more expensive to vote. All 7 states governed by Republican-controlled legislatures. The Democratic governor of Missouri vetoed one of these bills today. Republicans in the legislature in Missouri are already vowing to send him another one. And, of course, they are angling for a constitutional amendment to restrict voting rights in Missouri. The lawyers group, the Advancement Project, says that what red state legislatures are doing in the states right now is the largest legislative effort to scale back voting rights in a century. This week, USA Today published an editorial titled "Our View: Republican ID Laws Smack of Voter Suppression." Quote, "Scratch just gently beneath the surface, and these new measures appear unnecessary at best. Voter fraud is rare and consists largely of the types of actions that IDs would not correct. Republicans see a benefit in lowering the turnout among certain voters. The people most likely to be dissuaded by the hassle of obtaining an ID card, the old and infirm, the young and the poor, tend, of course, to vote Democratic." Joining us now is Melissa Harris-Perry, professor of political science at Tulane University and an MSNBC contributor. Melissa, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Are legislative efforts to make it harder to vote, harder to register to vote, are they... should we see them as being on the same continuum with the kinds of voter suppression tactics in Baltimore, like the ones that led to these indictments today?
Yes, and in fact, we should also see them on the same historical continuum with the Jim Crow laws that included things like poll taxes and literacy tests, and on the same continuum with the kind of so-called good government reforms that occurred in urban areas, largely to suppress the voting of white ethnics like the Irish and the Italians during the start of the 20th century. This is all part of a very, very long tradition within American politics of attempting to keep one's opponents out of the voting booth by using language about proper and appropriate, voters, but it's always about simply suppressing those that you don't want there, pulling the lever on Election Day.
One of the things that I feel like has changed, and I take your point about the sort of historical continuity about this as a strategic matter, but something that has changed, I think, in the last, 8 or 10 years, is that there doesn't seem to me to be a modern political consensus anymore that it is a good idea for people to vote, that higher voter participation is a national value, that people should be both encouraged to vote and that we should be proud when a lot of people do. I feel like when I was a kid, when I was growing up, even into my 20s, that was the sort of way that people would that was the sort of thing people would at least give lip service to. I don't feel like we have consensus on that anymore.
Yeah, well, I actually don't think that there's ever been a very strong consensus around that in the American political system. I mean, from the very beginning, we were founded on a sense of, real concern and anxiety about populism. We don't even directly elect our president. We didn't used to directly elect our senators. We didn't allow women to vote. I mean, we've always had to reach for the vote. We've always had to push to extend the franchise. So I actually think this is pretty consistent with how Americans have thought about it. But I want to be really, really clear here that these rules of the game, this is where politics really matters. We spend a lot of time in media, we spend a lot of time in elections really talking about the personalities, the individuals who are going to hold office. Are they courageous? Are they smart? Are they competent? Are they liberal? Are they conservative? But the grist, the stuff that makes all of this turn out one way or another are the rules by which we vote. And so when you start seeing massive efforts like this, then something is afoot that is not just about who will or won't run in 2012. That's almost irrelevant. This is where the big stuff is happening.
I could not agree more, and I have always had sort of a impressionistic theory that the reason that Republicans are better at thinking about those structural issues, about those rules issues, as you describe it, is because the Republican Party and the conservative movement operate independent of one another, and the conservative movement cares about advancing conservative principles and policies more than it cares about any individual candidate who they might fall in love with. So they've persuaded the Republican Party to do these eyes on the horizon, long-term things that change the structures in which politics is discussed, in which we have politics, in a way that Democrats have never really been able to do, because Democrats are really focused election to election to election.
Well, that's part of it, but I don't want to give quite that much credit to Republicans. I mean, part of the other issue is simply that Democrats are the messier party. We actually do have a more diverse electorate in terms of the variety of issues and opinions that are represented within the truly big tent of the Democratic Party. It's part of, the difficulty in holding together party discipline with such a diverse party. But look, when you look back at the George W. Bush administration and the efforts there to move us away from talking about voter suppression and instead to talk about voter fraud, and even to fire U.S. attorneys who were not willing willing to prosecute, quote, voter fraud. And even with their aggressive voter fraud efforts, they find fewer than 100 individual instances. I'm not even talking about, hundreds of thousands of people like we're seeing in this Maryland case. 100 people who seem to have committed voter fraud. That compared to this enormous problem of voter suppression that is old and historic and deeply rooted. Look, we have to get it together, not so much as Democrats, but as Americans. This is where the health of our democracy lies.
MSNBC contributor and Tulane University professor Melissa Harris Perry, you are wicked smart.
Can you come save me? I'm in New Orleans. They're here.
They are there. You should go see it. Okay, wait. Hold on. Okay, you guys don't listen. All right.
Help.
If you go over there and you can get anybody to talk to you, I will. What can I do? I will do something that you really want that I don't know about yet. If you get any of them to come on my show.
I'll at least twit pick it. How about that?
Yes. Deal. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.